Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, a Festivus for the rest of us. No matter what you celebrate, Figure Knights Theatre wishes you and yours a happy holiday season. Welcome to a special holiday episode of Figure Knights Theatre Podcast, episode 23.5, which is titled, What Is and Isn't G1? Well, now that Josh is here, we can actually do this question that we've been trying to do forever. I accidentally crossed it out, so pretend it's not. So
or
let's
just
go to
pretend
our
it doesn't
discussion
exist.
Questions. What's that?
Or pretend it just doesn't exist.
Yes, I forget how to remove that. But anyway, the question we've been trying to ask for a while here, we got into this weird chat in our FKT chat room, and we're like, well, what is G1 when it comes to the toys and media? What isn't G1? And opinions vary greatly. And we realized that because we were chatting, and each one of us kind of had a different answer for what's G1, what isn't. So, Leigh, since you're our guest, you know, what counts as G1 to you when it comes to like the shows and the toys? You know, what counts as G1?
Well, I mean, G1 is G1. I don't. Maybe I'm like missing the question. Like, I don't understand the.
Like, do you think the 80s cartoon that was on in the US, that's G1?
Yeah.
Do you think, like, to you, that's G1, right?
Yes.
All right. Is Beast Wars G1? Because it's connected to G1, so to you, does that count as G1?
No.
Okay. See, there's that. What about the Japanese cartoons that never came out in the US?
Headmasters.
Is that G1? Yeah. Is that G1?
No.
They are, but not in the strictest sense to me. But they are, because that happened without my knowledge, and I can't really say it was G1 or not.
There's a simple answer to that one. That's Japanese G1.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, does IDW count as G1? Did that continuity count as G1 to you? Because to some people, it does count. And that is G1.
I think it honestly kind of depends on the perspective of people from where they kind of came into things. For me, I came into G1 with Generation 1, first gen. You know, the original 80s cartoon, 80s...
1984.
Yeah. The original 4-issue... I know, right? We're old. The original 4-issue comic, then the movie, then you had your fail thing of Season 3 that we pretend didn't happen.
I like Season 3.
Hashtag the only G1 DVDs I have.
Hashtag I'm sorry.
Yeah, right?
I like Season 3.
Yep. Thank you, RD. Web World is awesome.
But I mean, but for people who are like much younger than me, who are coming into like IDW, who came in at Beast Wars, even people who came in at Beast Machines, that's their G1. Because that's where they understand. I think it kind of depends on like where they believe that their continuity begins. And
that's their introduction to Transformers.
Yeah.
That is not their G1.
Yeah.
No, it is not.
As someone
G1 is G1.
As someone who started with Energon, in no way is Energon my G1. Like, that's not even my perception of what Transformers really is or anything like that. That's just like, I learned to understand that was just what Transformers was at the time. I know that's just a small part of a larger whole.
Yeah. But no, like for me, G1 starts and stops with the Generation 1 80s thing, you know? That for me, and
Right.
and that's what it is. You know, the toy association, like the G1 toys. You know, that is all G1 for me. I love the stuff that Takara is doing now. Yes, it's relatable to G1 because they're basing it off G1, but that's still not G1.
Right. And speaking of the toys, that's the big other aspect of that, and that's something we were talking about a lot in FKT. It's like, okay, you have your masterpiece figure. You know, there's the G1 figures, which are clearly G1, you know, from the 80s. Then there's the masterpiece figures, which are based on G1. So it's like, do those count as G1?
See, for me, it's like I think the G1 toys are like the G1 toys, like the 80s toys. The ones that we're getting from MP, I believe, are G1 inspired, which to me is a difference. You know, it's G1 inspiration. They're taking the inspiration from that. You know, they're linking it up to, you know, bring back kind of that, you know, nostalgia thing. But no, G1 toys are, to me, isolated to the 1980s G1s and, you know, GoBots.
I want to jump off that inspiration thing, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Springboard.
So when you're talking about masterpiece figures being inspired by G1 toys or G1 characters, I actually very strongly disagree. They are not inspired by G1. They are directly intended to be the G1 characters. Like, you want to say something's inspired by G1, take, say, Bumblebee movie Bumblebee. That is inspired by G1 in that they're going back, or more, not so much Bumblebee himself, but all the Cybertronian characters. Those are inspired by G1 in their aesthetic, in their design. But the G1 MP characters, they're literally meant to represent the cartoon characters, especially of late. Literally take cartoon, turn into plastic, make giant insane puzzle to make that also turn into car.
Rubik's Cube.
Popples.
Oh, gosh.
So I would say we've got the original G1 toys, yes, but we also have the masterpiece figures, which I would say are simply G1 masterpiece figures. They're still G1.
But they're G1 masterpiece.
Yeah.
They're not G1.
Yeah, exactly. G1, I believe, is like 1980s. These are Generation 1 first wave Transformers toys. They came, they stopped, that's it. And, you know, and it's like, yeah, we're fine. We have those. A lot of people still have them. And it's like, I will say that that the new ones that we have are Generation 1 inspired. I understand that they're supposed to reflect the characters directly from the cartoons, and the technology that they have to make the figures these days is amazing compared to what they had in the 80s when they were first done. But they're not the Generation 1 wave. They're not the ones that came out when the cartoons came out. So, like, I can't classify them as Generation 1. I will sit there and say, okay, maybe not inspiration, maybe Generation 1 masterpiece for, you know, modern age, but they're not part of the original Generation 1 wave. So maybe, like, there should be a classification of, like, Generation 1 original and then Generation 1 masterpiece. And I would be fine with that. But don't sit there and, like, but when somebody says, oh, I have a G1 toy, I'm sitting here and thinking that a toy from the 80s, not a masterpiece.
And there's a spectrum on that, too. Just like, you know, there's a where things fit in. Like, these new Siege figures are way more G1 than, like, the classics figures were in 06.
Yes.
So there's varying degrees of that.
Yeah.
And that's what...
They're still not G1. They're inspired by the G1, the Siege figures.
And
which is...
whatever media comes out for them is going to even further reinforce that point, because they're not going to be the same as they were in a cartoon. They may be very similar. But they're going to do something to make things different. Oh, like, I don't know, like Barricade being the Prowl Reaper. Big middle fingers from me, but that's what they're doing. So
yeah, and I mean, and I guess, like, when it comes to what are the G1 toys, it's like Generation 1, their first wave, the first group of toys that came out with that. And that's where I think that it starts and stops for me. The C triggers, like, I haven't played with them, so all of that. But I mean, it's like the same thing with the GoBot ones that they're issuing now. What was it?
Yeah, they're not original.
Yeah.
They're not OG.
Yeah, and it's just like, no, you don't consider them to be part of the Generation 1 GoBots, do you? No. Even
Generation 1 GoBots was even a thing.
no, there you had.
It is now that there's new stuff.
I know. Well, they have new stuff, but they had old GoBot toys. I had some of the original GoBot toys, and those are like,
I have some too.
yeah, and I mean,
yard
like,
sale
those
or
are
something.
Generation 1 toys, just like the Transformers are Generation 1 toys. The Ninja Turtle action figures are Generation 1 toys. Like, I think that it's whatever came first to be your Generation 1. It's not a...
Oh.
Okay. Well,
Oh, that makes my skin crawl a little bit. G1 is like a Transformers thing.
Oh,
I don't think anything else out there is G1.
okay, would you like me to say First Wave? Would you
But
like me to say First Wave and
it is-
GFG1?
Yeah.
Right.
Only Transformers.
I agree with your point, just not your nomenclature.
Okay, fine. I'll
I
say
think
First
other
Wave.
people I think other people are like saying OG or Gen 1. I got that a lot at the Bumblebee movie preview thing when they did that little featurette at the end. All the creators kept saying Gen 1. And I'm like, that's not what it's called.
Yeah, it's G1.
It's G1,
That's not what it's
guys.
called. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
You're
no,
trying to
it's-
make us love you, and you're losing.
It can also be Generation 1 because
Yeah.
they, like, Transformers had a Generation 2 brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where G1 comes from. I mean, nobody at the time would have thought to call it that until Generation 2.
Right.
Now I think I'm going to answer the question.
Go ahead.
Please.
I agree with Leigh that it is that G1 is time based, and even though there's stuff that's G1 that I was never exposed to until like many years later, like the Japanese stuff and whatever, but I still consider that G1. And like the stuff that came before Generation 2, basically. Comics, the whole nine.
So,
So that's yes.
well, my take on it actually is quite different. I don't think it's time based. I think it's more fiction based, lore based. I'm not quite sure what exactly I would base it on.
You're talking about the art and the aesthetic and the premise.
Not quite,
And-
actually. I'm talking. Here's what I
Are you
think
thinking
it is.
more like
I think it's
placement-wise of where it would be on timeline?
character-based.
Yeah.
Yeah, timeline,
based?
character, continuity based. So, like, say, in particular, like I would call anything that's meant to represent a G1 Optimus Prime as a character. I would say that is a toy of a G1 Optimus Prime. Like the MP10, MP01, those are G1 primes, even though they're MPs, yes, but and they're not G1 toys. Those are specifically the 80s toys that came out during that time. But especially
they're-
when it comes to media, the IDW is weird because I don't consider that.
Well,
G1.
Galvatron's not Megatron, so it's not.
What?
Galvatron is not Megatron. And
I think
Yeah, that's
IDW's
weird.
continuity that just ended needs a
It
name.
was.
But
Right.
because right now the TF Wiki is calling it the IDW G1 continuity. I don't. I never really thought of it that way. It certainly took
No,
a
it's
lot
just
of
based
aesthetics
on
from
it.
it. Yeah. But
Yeah.
like, with
And
all
that's
the...
weird because they continued the G1 continuity when they did Regeneration 1, so it's yeah. That's
I
weird.
would call Regeneration 1 G1. That's definitely G1 media. Direct
Yeah,
continuation of the
that is.
original comic, even though it came out in the 2000s.
I would say so.
in
think that-
in the
that
way
one
that you're
works.
phrasing
Yeah, but that's
that,
like
I
the
think you
reissue
can-
thing, which is different than like
Right.
we're gonna, that's like when Disney retakes something out of the vault to resell it and remaster it.
But it's still the same product.
Yeah,
Might
it's
even
still
be, unless you're going with specifically like a digital remaster, which can still be argued to be technically the same product. It's just polished.
Regeneration, it continued after 81, am I right?
Regeneration.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it
right.
picked up. It picked up after the end of
So
the U.S. Marvel comic.
It's like a fanfic that was made canon.
God.
Sort of,
Kinda, yeah.
In that all
Kinda.
fiction made by the original creators is fan fiction. That's canon. In the same sense that
it is the original
Force Awakens
creators,
is
and
canon.
it's as
I mean fan fiction.
it's as close as you can get to being real G1. That's probably your purest example, because it is the original creators continuing what they started
But even they
way back then.
I've not read it, but even they go a little weird and like incorporate some sort of like multiverse thing where future versions of characters show up, and like I just conceptually I don't like that, because I would want, if I wanted to read Regeneration 1, first off I'd have to read the G1 comics, which I haven't read yet. It's on my to-do list eventually. I would want it to continue as if it continued back then. I want it to maintain that style and not do that sort of reference things that happened later, which is fine story-wise, but it kind of takes me out of it conceptually.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm
I
still
would have to read
weirded.
it and see whether it did.
I'm
it
still
well. I don't
weirded
know.
out by the fact of like Rat Trap and Waspinator like being the same size of all of them, when I clearly remember in Beast Wars they were like a pinprick size compared to their like counterparts there. It's like, wait, aren't they? He was like
that's a different
smaller.
continuity, is what I
Yeah,
would say.
exactly.
Right. Beast Wars and Vinyl Tech are the only two other continuities I know of that write their stories without changing anything that happened in G1.
Yeah, I would
So
say
those two are the closest things to... They're the most adjacent to G1.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
well,
would say Beast Wars is not G1, but it is in the same continuity. It's
Yes,
it's
they
sort
don't
of like
change
a
the continuity.
yeah, it's sort of like a G2 situation. If G2 actually had anything going for it beyond a short comic that didn't last
Well,
very long.
Bright
Yeah.
colors, extreme!
Well, and you had like the weird Headmaster 3 episode oopsie where like, oh, these characters died in the movie, but they're actually alive. Oh. Whoops.
But like one of the things I was pointing out when we were sort of chatting about it before, like practically a month ago or two, was the one thing I'll take is I'll hold up a toy, say from Classics, and let's take was it Classics or Universe that had Ironhide? Whichever one that was.
Universe.
Okay.
I think that was Universe Classics.
Yeah.
I think that's how that comes to play.
All right.
I
However,
think he would be
I think technically
Chug
Universe,
Ironhide.
but
sure.
that really old one that had like the really weird panels that were weird.
Yeah.
But I would hold that up and ask you, which Ironhide is this?
Mm-hmm.
And what?
Classics, Universe Ironhide.
Okay, but which character is he? Which Ironhide?
I would agree that he's based on G1.
Yeah, it's a G1 Ironhide. Sure as heck is an Energon Ironhide. Hi, Energon Ironhide on my shelf.
I see what you're... Yeah, I mean, I see
Yeah.
what you're saying. I just would never word it that way.
Yeah.
And this,
There's
this
a
is
difference.
Sort of my perspective as someone who, when I got into Transformers, all these things already existed, and there were already categories from which I could pick.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have...
A lot of them already existed when you were born.
yeah,
Yeah.
more than 90% of them.
And
But I think what we're getting at is there's a big difference between actual G1 and inspired by, or somewhat
taking their
based
cues
on.
from G1.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Chug was all about taking the classic G1 characters and giving them a modern update. You
Yeah.
know?
But without any real media to go with it, yeah, a lot of the
Exactly.
IDW comics use those character designs retroactively. But without any media to go with it, they kind of just fall into being G1 characters to me, rather than being any updated version of the character. It's just an updated plastic version. It's still the same
And I've
character
used
in my
those
eyes.
versions to take pictures of things that happened in G1 episodes when I would get them back there. I've got Trans Europe Express set up as soon as I got the tracks and the wheel jack, so I could put them in their places and pretend I had all that going on. So yeah.
Yeah, and so and sort of
I mean-
tying into this, like, just because IDW used like classic Sunstreaker in their All Hail Megatron design, that doesn't make that to me All Hail Megatron Sunstreaker. In the same vein that that John Barber's Robots in Disguise using all the War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron designs doesn't make War for Cybertron Starscream Robots in Disguise Starscream. That's still the War for Cybertron toy. Which
Yeah,
but
War
it
for
can.
Cybertron is, by the way, not G1.
Yeah, and
If you
But see-
if you read All Hail Megatron first and then got that Sunstreaker, you'd be, oh yeah, I got All Hail Megatron Sunstreaker. It's just about perspective.
yeah, but I mean,
suppose
like,
that's true.
you know, and for me, like, I have the original G1 Jazz. I would not put him next to Downbeat and say these are both G1. I wouldn't.
But would you say that Downbeat is a toy of G1 Jazz?
I would say he's inspired by G1 or a direct composition of G1, but he's not G1 because G1 to me is G1, the first wave of Transformers toys.
So if this is just sort of me being curious about your perspective now, if say
Oh, here we go.
Jeff Senior, if say Jeff Senior at a con drew a commission of Jazz and used the G1 character design, would you say that's G1 Jazz, or would you say that's inspired by G1 Jazz because it wasn't drawn in the 80s? And I'm asking this question sincerely. I'm not trying to
Yeah, no.
be passive aggressive or anything.
No, I would still say it's a Generation 1 inspired drawing.
Interesting.
But I mean,
I don't know. If Jeff Senior draws it at a con and says it's G1 Jazz, I think I'll give
yeah,
it.
and I mean, like, I'll give him that. I think
And does
art.
it change if like Casey Collar draws him?
I don't think.
Yeah, because Casey Collar
Yeah, he-
designed his own Jazz.
Yeah, he doesn't have the. But like,
Or somebody did
but like for me, like,
for him.
like art is a difficult thing to kind of like put into that perspective though, because art is going to be inspired by such and such. Is it Generation 1? No, it's Generation 1 inspired art.
Our toy's not art, in a sense.
Yeah, but
Yes,
but
they
I'm
are.
regarding toys the same way art is. Like, I think like the oh jeez, my brain is going blurp blurp blurp. Like the movie depiction comics from the G1 movie. I have the original ones, and I have the reissues that were done in what 2000 or something. I believe they were 2000, the reissue ones.
Those Titan books?
No, they're still the 4-part thing, but they're like just reissued things, but like they're drawn more, they're colored differently. Like they've reissued them.
Okay,
Oh,
so
I've heard of
they're
those,
like
yeah.
probably
Yeah.
redone, not just like a reprint.
Yeah.
Okay.
The original ones that I have, the original three, those are G1 to me. The reissue ones are not.
So like my I've got Titan books reprints of the like the last 4 volumes of G1 Marvel, which by the way I have read those. Like the Primal Scream, Matrix Quest, End of the Road, All Fall Down. I got those last 2 switched up, but I've got those books, and those are, as I understand it, those are just direct reprints of the original comics in trade paperback. I don't think they had any error correction or recoloring or anything done with that.
Yes.
G1?
Because they are reprints. If they are direct reprints without any kind of editing or tampering or anything like that, I would consider them G1. Because their content is original.
And I would say I would actually still say they are reprints of G1.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they're direct original
Yeah.
comics or anything like that.
Yeah, like I would say that they're G1 reprints. Are they processed in Generation 1? No. Like they're G1 in reprint things. Are they in the timeline of Generation 1 G1 of what I consider G1? No.
They're not vintage,
Yeah, exactly. They're not vintage. It's whether or not it goes into vintage aspect. I think that's what I'm trying to decide, like, trying to word, is that if it's not the classic vintage, I don't consider it to be G1.
Yeah, and throughout all this discussion, I'm not trying to advocate that my perspective is the correct one. And
And I'm not advocating that mine is either, because mine can be
exactly.
completely, adverse to someone else's, and I respect someone else's feelings on it. My feelings are what mine are, and I am, inclined to like be open about somebody else's perspective on it, because I think that's where, and I will bring this up because it is something that I see very commonly, and I do also see it with the with people who are G1 loyalists, as myself, and exactly, where it's like, can we just all agree to disagree?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm interested in here, is not arguing about, oh, this is what I think, this is why you should think it. I'm just saying, this is what I think. Tell me what you think. I'm interested.
Yeah, and
as
what
a
I
philosophy
think,
minor, I just want to ask the questions.
Yeah, and for me, I believe that G1, like true G1, is vintage. It's the vintage stuff. Came out all at once. Like, I don't consider headmasters to be part of G1.
You mean the Headmaster's cartoon?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like, I don't consider that to be G1. Like, I think G1 is the vintage original, came first. There you go. That's what G1 is to me. And in that regard, it's like, I respect someone else disagreeing with that. But I don't believe that people should get into, like, brawly, you're wrong and my opinion is right, and that is the only opinion that should be there. And I think that that's where we have a problem with, like, G1 loyalists, and ones who are not G1 loyalists, who are a little bit more open to introducing stuff into what they consider to be a G1 continuity. It's like, I want to hear other people's opinion, and I appreciate the fact that it's like, all right, you want to have your opinion, that's fine. Don't shove your opinion down my throat. I'm not going to shove my opinion down your throat. It's like, agree to disagree. Understand that everybody has a different perspective, and it's about being adults and being respectful of other things.
Like religion.
Okay, we're going to do that then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't shove yours down my throat, I won't shove my lack of one down yours, and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
But the minute you start trying to affect my life with your rules about things, I'm done with it.
Yeah, and I think just as a fandom, just in general, I think that this needs to just be addressed and conversed with, is that there is so much negative stuff and things that are happening out there that something as simple as like disagreeing over what is someone's perspective on G1 and isn't. It's like, this is a silly conversation and argument to have. Like, not conversation like, let's have a discussion. I mean, conversation as, oh, this is mine and this is the way it is and that's it. And if you disagree, then we can't be friends. It's like, do we really have to get into, like, divisions because of this? Like, this is silly to get into, to divide over and to argue over. Like, our fandom is, like, as small as it is. I mean, it's wide as far as everything goes, but it's like, but you should kind of almost treat it kind of like as a family, because you treat family members that way. Like, family members, they're all going to have a different perspective, and it's all, I think what it comes down to is just being respectful of someone else's perspective. And I just...
Oh, you don't have an Alabama family, right?
I have a German mother. That's enough. Andrew can probably vouch on the whole German thing. But like, it's actually kind of saddening to see that. I hear somebody huffing, getting kind of angry at the conversation.
No, that's true. That's true. With his vape.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Stop vaping at me, dude.
Seriously.
But really. So he just huffs it harder.
That was a fake. I don't know who that
I know.
was.
I was like, really?
That was me doing it. That was me. But
yeah, but
no,
yeah,
I just wanted to.
Yeah, I'm just gonna end that with that. We need to just agree to disagree and respect other people's perspective and understand that not everybody, and even the ones that agree with you, are not going to agree with you on everything. You know, and it's just be respectful of someone else's perspective. Like, I just don't understand.
Yeah. And the interesting
one
thing
go ahead.
Andrew, go. I've been talking a lot.
Well, I was gonna say, like, that's why I said opinions vary greatly. At the beginning of what is G1, what isn't, etc. Because there's no right or wrong answer here. It's your opinion what it is, you know. I don't recall seeing a actual textbook, you know, 100% like, hey, this is G1 and anything that doesn't match this definition isn't, you know. It's a fandom and it's a fandom term, you know, and it's evolved a little bit over the years, so it's kind of up to you what counts as G1, what doesn't, and in the end, does it really matter?
Exactly.
You're gonna buy and watch what you like and what you think matches that.
It doesn't really matter.
That's
not
true.
the
song
Okay.
my brain went to.
What?
All right. Any other comments on that? RD, did you have anything else to say?
I agree with everything everybody said.
Great, your
Well,
two
in my
cents.
day, we
Short,
called
sweet,
G1
and concise.
Transformers.
I was going to say, I'm glad how Josh and I were the ones that actually discussed this. Everyone else is just like, yes,
Yep.
yes, that's good. You know, adjusting their little manacles and things like that. All right, all right.
Yeah, I thought this was gonna be a me and Drew politely at each other's throats thing.
Instead, it was a Leigh and Josh discussing what their variants are and just smiling and nodding and say, okay, I respected your decision, and I'm fine
And
with
Drew
that.
grumbling in the
Yeah.
background.
Exactly, and Drew vaping at me in the
I think
background.
I've had too much. I think I've had too much time to process this and actually think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So now he's going to
because
go at our throats.
Right there when you first presented that everything that was based on G1 was G1, I was like, no, fuck you. Fuck you, you little noob. Go away.
I would like to point out that while
That is
I got
RD
into
being old.
Transformers with Energon,
That wasn't me.
G1 also was very key in my early introduction to Transformers. Energon was the show that I watched on TV, and then like that same year that I got into that, every year my family would go visit my aunt and uncle, and my cousin, who was at the time in his 30s, so he grew up on G1 cartoon that we all agree is G1, and he had the Rhino DVD set of all those, and he also had some G1 toys that were all from the 80s that we all agree are G1.
Yep.
And so when I had gotten into Energon, I went there and I started playing with his toys that he had out, like just in a big bin of random toys. And I started recognizing, oh, these are Transformers. This is like this looks like Optimus. He's white, but he looks like Optimus. It was Ultra Magnus.
Yeah, I was going to say
And
Magnus.
Then I noticed that he had the DVDs, and so I asked if I could borrow them, and so that summer, I forget if it was whatever season it was, I just watched the whole thing, and that suddenly I got through all of G1 before I even got through all of Energon. So that was the thing. So
That's awesome.
it's still in my youth, I got hit with it when I was in the target audience, just many years later.
I would just say though, and I know I'll probably have a bunch of Bayformers like trying to pound on my door, but I have actually witnessed with my own ears people who have seen the Bayverse movies and it's like, and then they hear the G1 term and not realizing what G1 actually is. They're like, oh yeah, I saw the Michael Bay movies, and it's like, oh my god, Michael Bay is definitely not G1, and I'm gonna punch you in the throat.
Yeah, Vangelis has been tweeting in along those lines. He's like referring to the Michael Bay movies as the G1 movies.
Yeah, it's just like, it's like, I'm gonna punch you in the throat. I'm gonna punch you in the throat.
He's doing it very ironically.
Yeah.
I think he's joking.
It's like
But
throat
yeah,
punch.
we
Well,
do
you know,
need to come up with nomenclature for things. in
I have
regard.
that problem like in day-to-day life. Like if you tell somebody you just met, oh, I like Transformers, they automatically think that you like Bumblebee peeing on people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's just like, oh, no.
I think-
The real Transformer.
I think there is getting to be a greater cultural perception that is not entirely what Transformers is. Like, even though that's the first thing most random humans think of when they hear Transformers, I think most random
Right.
humans also know, oh, but that's based on something else. And especially with all these movie versions of all these old things or reboots, I think everyone's starting to generally assume, I bet the original thing that it was based on was better and the movie ruined it.
I was gonna say, oh, you mean like the G1 movie in theaters in September? Thank you, Fathom.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that
And-
was a fun experience. for
Oh
me.
yeah.
Yeah, and the Sonic people are finding that out right now,
I have no clue what the heck is going on with the Sonic thing.
and it's very it's kind of what's that word? It's kind of cathartic to watch them squirm and say, "What have they done? They're raping my childhood. Why is this furry, muscly Sonic on this poster?"
Pokemon. Just saying.
Dude, that Pokemon thing looks awesome, though.
Mr. Mime is like the thing of my like nightmares. Okay.
Oh, I okay.
Yeah.
I thought spiders were the things of your nightmares.
Shut up. Okay, I have to deal with Al every time. Okay, I had to deal with Al in Chicago too. Hate you.
But, I was gonna say. Oh right. The other thing I wanted to add blah, 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 about all this.
Oh, is that?
G1
Oh, okay, good. We're
is
done now.
That G1 is starting to become a very nebulous term for people who have something similar to my perspective, especially with everything that Hasbro's been doing lately. Until the the Prime Wars trilogy YouTube Machinima series came out, I would have said that the Prime Wars toys are clearly G1 characters. And then suddenly some media came out that changed my perception of them. Oh, okay, so they're Prime Wars, not G1, even though they all look basically almost
G1.
exactly like G1, except some of them are headmasters that weren't initially.
Yeah.
So
Or
stuff like that's
combiners that
happening.
weren't originally.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God, yeah.
Or
Yeah.
blast off as a jet for some stupid reason, except for the blast off that's not a jet because everyone thought that was dumb, and so they made one that wasn't a jet. Thanks, Takara.
Right.
Genuine thanks,
Yay.
Takara, not ironic. And a lot of what Hasbro is doing now with all their character designs is they're just like, especially with Siege, because that's what everyone's calling it. That we're not calling it War for Cybertron.
Yeah.
Is
Because we already had one.
Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly.
Hasbro needs some better work in the
We
name
already had that,
department at
and we
this
had a
point.
game, which is amazing.
Yes. Everything's gravitating so much towards a G1 design aesthetic to the point where it's almost indistinguishable for me, especially like, oh, which Optimus Prime am I looking at again? Is this Power of the Primes? Is this Titan's Return? Is this Cyberverse? Okay, Cyberverse is actually doing a little better. Or is this the I can't tell anymore. They're just all G1 Primes to me. I'm like, can I
think
get
that's
something new, different, maybe?
Yeah, well, see, and I think that's kind of like where people like me get a lot of their, well, some people like me, the G1 loyalists, some of them are just rabid, and I don't understand them. But, like, you know, you're kind of almost forced to, like, Generation 1 is G1, first wave, that's it. Because there isn't really, you know, much of an option with it, because everything is going back to that original aesthetic. Where it's like, alright, well, these new designs aren't doing very well, but the original designs did really well, and people recognize them, so let's go ahead and do that. It's kind of like looking at the difference on the Michael Bay Transformer movies, gag, and the new Bumblebee movie. They did a little nod to the G1 designs, in that little bit right there. And it's kind of like, okay, you did your G1 nod, and I appreciate that. But it's like, but when you hear, oh yay, we're having a G1 movie, and G1 is in it, and I'm like, no, we're not. No, we're not. We are not having a G1 movie. We really aren't, because G1 movie was Transformers the movie, 1986. That's it.
Yep.
That's it for me. And it's like you're almost kind of forced to separate it that way, just because everything is kind of falling back into that, like, Generation 1 aesthetic, or the inspiration. Like, if you look at it, there's a few things that are, like, different, but a majority, 70 to 80, 70, no, not even 80, like 70, 75% is going to be Generation 1 inspired, because that's where you click. Like, like with the Bumblebee movie, it took me forever to realize that little upside down gray Dorito thing was Starscream in the Michael Bay movies. But do you see that, like, I mean, granted, I kind of figured that the one guy was, like, not Starscream when they did the Bumblebee preview, but okay, I was, like, the small aspect that knew that he wasn't. But, like, you see Starscream, like, in the, like, capture, when they're on Cybertron, like, fighting. You recognize him right away.
I didn't. I didn't
He
recognize him.
he was behind Shockwave. But okay, fine. You recognize Shockwave. You recognize Soundwave because they're going with that G1 aesthetic.
Yeah.
Because
that was something that really boggled me at first when all those trailers came out. Was I was expecting this to be a movie prequel.
Mm-hmm.
And all those went out, and you're saying, "Oh, you recognize Soundwave, you recognize Shockwave." I looked at that and went, "That doesn't look like Soundwave. That doesn't look like Shockwave. Those look like the G1 versions.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what they look like in these movies."
Yeah.
And so that threw me. Having seen the movie, it's a pre-reboot.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like
pre-boot.
I like that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, and that's where I kind of like, I stop a little bit because I look and it's like, I look at that little trailer and I love People to Death. I really do. I love that there's a G1 nod in there, but I cannot get over the fact that going from, I understand that Bumblebee is the main focus in the movie, but it looks like he went from one style to another, and it's like Bumblebee is one style, and then like Cybertron, no, it just looks like someone is doing like stop motion CGI with their MP figures, guys. I'm sorry.
They needed to movie up those designs a little bit in a slightly different direction.
Exactly, and it's like, and I applaud the fact that they wanted to make Soundwave true to his color blue, but that is a really awful color blue to try to transfer into like CGI form because he just looks blue.
And I think what they're trying to do right now is to make the line just more instantly recognizable across the
Yeah, and that's something...
And I think once they've cemented these characters back in, like they're doing with Siege, and like this is clearly Sideswipe, that maybe those designs can evolve from there a little and change up as they go forward without being Revenge of the Fallen Sideswipe, which if they didn't tell you, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And having
Revenge. Oops, sorry. I was going to say, or the Revenge of the Fallen little, like, RC, Alita one, and what was the other one? Moonracer?
No, the other one was
Chrome.
Well, whichever
RC,
one's the little
RC.
weird bike things, and you're going...
No, Alita 1.
Yeah,
It was Alita
and for,
1.
like,
Flare Up was an original name.
Okay, and then it's like, you see them for all of, like, 2 seconds, and it's like, who the hell are those? Is that just something that Michael Bay, like, shoved out of his ass again? And then it's like,
Yeah,
oh no,
it's
those
the
are supposed to be
one time
them. And it's
that
like...
Michael Bay didn't sex something up.
Yeah, and it's like...
Right.
But I mean, when you compare to like Michael Bay to the new thing, it's like if they were all fighting, thanks to color scheme and trying, at least you can tell the difference of, hey, okay, that's Soundwave, and he's actually not molesting a satellite, so that's good. So, and Ravage is actually Ravage and doing something, and hopefully Frenzy will be Frenzy and not that weird whatever scarecrow vulture navel thing that was in the Michael Bay film that talks and does weird things, and it's like, I'm gonna move like a snake, but then I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna be a turkey vulture.
I like that Frenzy, actually. He entertains me.
But it's weird, because it's like, what are you supposed to be?
He's a dude made of knives.
And talks and spits.
Like most of Bayformers.
Like, he spits the same way Starscream does, and it's like, can you close your mouth?
Wait, when did Frenzy spit?
He spits when he was like on the console talking to the Asian guy. He's like,
You're talking about a Laserbeak.
Asian guy.
or Laserbeak. There you go. And he's like,
Okay.
I'm like, oh my god, stop spitting. Birds don't spit.
Yeah, that was a weird bit. Well, birds do spit, but
Well,
they spit up food to feed their young.
Yeah, but I'm not like. It's like, oh,
Ugh.
okay. Can you? All right. Hold on. Let me get you a tissue.
The interesting thing for me is because I grew up with, while I did grow up with G1, I came into the Unicron trilogy, so the norm for me was everything changes all the time. There is no definitive version, whereas most of you guys, I think, or even all of you, grew up with this is Transformers, and then suddenly it changed. Whereas with me,
that's a
Transformers
very
is always
Japanese thing. That's just it's a very Japanese thing, and that's where those Unicron trilogies were from.
Yeah.
Because, like the Super Sentai, the Power Rangers, every year it's a different thing.
But I like that aspect. I think that's how the brand's going to survive. I think this whole everything must be G1-ish is
Look at Star Wars. The more they go back to it looking like the original stuff, the more people are interested in it. Now, just because they're interested in it doesn't mean they like it.
But here's the thing. Like, let's take The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. The Force Awakens is practically A New Hope.
Oh yeah,
with
it's the same.
different characters
Yes.
copy pasted in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that drew a lot of people in, and maybe that's what a lot of fans wanted. But compare that to The Last Jedi, which is more interesting? Last Jedi is way more interesting to me, regardless of whether you liked it or not. One is more creative. It does more things, and it has more potential to hook in new people.
Oh, are we talking about the episode 1 movies?
We're talking no. He's talking about the one where he throws the lightsaber over his shoulder. And
I'm just kidding.
several
I'm being
people I know that
snarky.
are huge. I know. Half the people I know that love that Star Wars stuff wanted to walk out on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can change things, but when you make Luke a different character to the point where it pisses the fans off, you've made a misstep.
And
Whether it's more interesting or not.
And I'm just throwing out for Andrew, and he can edit this out later. But I'm opting that we have the Figures Night Theater thing, and then we have Figures Night Theater 23.2. What is G1 to you? And have it as a separate recording.
I second that, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it could work.
But with everything being so hard G1 and everything blurring together, I don't think this will last. I think I think we're on this whole nostalgia boom in the culture right now, but pretty soon that's just gonna die and everyone's gonna forget again. I think I think Transformers needs to continue to evolve. I like the direction Cyberverse is taking it. Also, I'm going to say watch Cyberverse if you can. I'm really loving it.
I tried, but they're so fucking annoying. Bumblebee with his little goddamn woo-woo touchdown! The Windblade can't act!
Give it a few more episodes, it gets better.
I can't. I can't get through the first couple.
I have been meaning to try Cyberverse because I've been so far behind, but unfortunately, just with the recent events going on, I don't have the motivation to right now.
But things that they're doing with it, say take Grimlock, where
no spoilers because Cyberverse actually is one that I want to watch.
Okay, I'll keep it spoiler free.
Yay!
The character design is very very G1 looking, but even that they took it and they twisted it up a little bit. So he's got the color scheme and he's still a T-Rex, yeah, but look at his head. I like that they gave him a face under the mouth plate, and I like that they kept still the general look of Grimlock and just stuck a face under that, and the face is very characterful.
You like that.
Yeah, and they gave him they changed his personality a bit in a way that is surprising when you first see it, but as the story progresses you see them veer back towards the elements of the original personalities of the original Grimlocks. I'm using the plural deliberately because they were very different.
And I'm just saying that some things that they do different on characters isn't all that great, and it's kind of scary. Like when they had Megatron take his helmet off, I'm sorry, I was reminded of a sunflower or a daisy.
That I hated.
I'm like, oh god.
But yeah, we can have missteps. That will happen if you try to change things. Some things will stick, some things won't. But if you don't try to keep adding changes to the fiction, if you don't try to keep doing something new and different, everyone's gonna get tired of it, and it's gonna get lost. So I encourage change in my Transformers.
Change into a truck.
Oh God, I'll punch you in the throat.
Or I'm cool with changing into a flying fire engine.
I just want to be a Porsche. I just want to be a
I
Porsche.
still think you're going to get that, Josh. I think that there's a version of that coming down the road very soon.
What you mean an MP Galaxy Convoy?
I think there'll be a War for Cybertron Siege Galaxy Convoy. They got to turn that Ultra Magnus into something.
We'll see if it's better than the OG, not G1 Galaxy Convoy.
Mm-hmm. All right, y'all. Well, I think we've been talking about this one for long enough, so we can wrap this up. Leigh, thank you so much for being on again.
Thank you for having me.
That was no problem. we always enjoy having you on, hearing your perspectives and points of view, and
boobies.
I was glad that.
Oh
and
gosh,
yes.
I missed that, didn't I?
Is that what we just heard? Your boobies?
Oh,
Andrew has had to deal with my boobies in Black Arachnia.
No comment.
Ultra Gear.
Oh God, I hate.
They did not attack me, and they're fine.
Would you believe that? Yeah, I know, right? Would you believe that Ian actually wrote that on my Black Arachnia chest plate?
I would believe
Yeah.
it because I have seen
What
it.
did
Yes,
write?
you have seen that.
That
Yeah,
is the only reason I was staring at your boobs.
yeah, exactly. Right? It's like, why are you okay? Yeah, Ian actually
What
I was
did he-
afraid that Al would write something raunchy, so I was sitting here and watching him as he's autographing the breastplate. And Ian, I just kind of left alone because he's a little bit more behaved and stuff. And then I look over and Ian wrote on the other side, "These are Ultra Gear," and I'm like, oh fuck my life.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, and Al was behaved. He's like, terrorize Al. And I'm like, okay. And yeah, these are Ultra Gear. God damn it, Ian.
All right. Well, does anyone want to give out their social media stuff?
No, I'm good
Anybody?
tonight. Let's just go.
No.
Let's just go
Okay.
home.
Can
Well-
I do a shameless plug?
No.
Sure.
Yes,
Do your
please.
shameless plug
No.
quickly.
So the reason that I wasn't here for most of this show,
Oh, no.
unless we split the show up in two, in which case ignore that comment, is that I was this is Tech Week for me for Man of La Mancha at the Workhouse Art Center in Lorton, Virginia. I will be playing the role of Dr. Carrasco. He's actually a lead character. This is my first professional stage role since high school, so this is exciting for me. If you're
Excellent.
in the Virginia area, or the Northern Virginia area specifically, we'll be playing December 15th through January 13th, Friday nights, Saturday nights, and Sunday afternoons. You can tweet at me at T_F_Allen with 2 L's and an E. If you're interested in figuring out how to get tickets or anything like that, there's also a Facebook for the Workhouse Art Center with an event for the show. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Show's coming together really well. We open, as of this recording, we open in 2 days, barely.
All right.
so,
Cool.
If you go by the @FKT podcast Twitter, all of our Twitters are listed there.
Which I don't
In
think.
the description.
Well, I actually don't think mine is because I only recently started
No,
using.
Lee's isn't, but all of our regular hosts.
I was
That
going to
is
say our
true.
guests aren't included in this.
No. If you want
My
to give
bad.
yours out, Leigh, feel free. If you don't, that's fine.
Yeah, my Twitter is Jazzy Leigh. So it's just Jazzy JAZZY LEIGHLEI. I know, right?
Cool.
Not Leelay, not Lay,
All right,
not Leia.
and,
I
you'll-
would have read that as Lee Lai,
and-
but
I will
okay.
punch you.
and RD, do you want to give out any social media, or are you good?
Sure, Series6podcast.com. What's up, Internet? I'm taking it back.
I think I follow you.
And,
on
All
Twitter
right,
now.
and
check
go
out
ahead.
Joe on Joe podcast. I'm on the most recent one.
Awesome.
What? Joe and Joe?
Joe on Joe podcast. It's a podcast
Okay, cool.
about G.I. Joe, the series.
Cool.
Oh,
I will check
That
that,
is
out.
not what I thought. Joe on Joe.
Yeah, that's not. No.
Bounce.
Oh, yeah, that sounds more appropriate.
Of course, of course, it went in that direction.
It could have been coffee.
This is true.
Anyway, my Twitter is at ShatSpeaks. Hosting for us is provided by the Audio Knights Theatre. You can find them at what are they? TAKT Online on Twitter. You can find them under the Audio Knights Theatre on YouTube and Facebook. And if you have any need for professional voice acting for, commercials, your business, etc., or if you need some audio editing, get in touch with Dave. That's Audio Knights Theatre, which ends with TRE, at gmail.com. That's the email. So, yeah. And thank you, everyone, for listening. If you agree with us, disagree, or just want to discuss, feel free to shoot us a message. We'd love to hear from you. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
And please
Bye.
stop making plastic toys with fleshy breasts.
Titties.
That's an upgrade kit.
Oh my god.
All right.
Humanity.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.